extension. But that did cause a bit of a problem with the requirements for renewal. And people then had to renew right away in 2011 instead of the 2-year full cycle. So for those interpreters who got that initial license and then right away had to renew again in 2011, their first cycle was really only 6 months long. So they didn't have full 3 cycles. They only had 2 full and a quarter, really, of a license. So that caused some problems for those individuals. Because so we have many interpreters who don't have a license because of that. And also many of those interpreters moved on and got the renewable license. 17 of those interpreters moved on and got the renewable license because they got national certification. And so, of course, they can continue to renew as long as they wish. And then, of course, other interpreters moved out of state after they had the license here, and they didn't renew because they didn't need it. They weren't working here anymore. So now we have 28 interpreters who can't renew because they've had their initial license plus their 2 renewed license. So they've exhausted all of those options for the restricted license. And so they have to move on and get national certification, but with the RID moratorium, they're stuck. And so the request was sent to DSPS to give an extension to those interpreters who need to take the national test, but it's unable to because of the moratorium. And that request was denied because of the legislative language. If they wouldn't have had their 3 cycles already, they would be able to, of course, renew again at the restricted level, but they've exhausted all of those, and that's the only option given in the law. So those interpreters can do volunteer work, but they can't work professionally for fee. So that group of people they're stuck. So of course we are trying to support those individuals and find a pathway for them to continue working.
Rhonda has a question. So I'm looking at your numbers. So of the 150 restricted licenses, 81 are not practicing, they're inactive.
Right.
So that gives you what, about 69? So those 28, are they of the 69 that, okay, I was following the math.
Hang on, put a math.
Timing is of essence.
Maybe you could clarify about the permanent license as well, and how many people currently hold a permanent, unrestricted license.
I will make sure you get confirmation on Monday that this number is right, but I have over here on my sheet that it's 201 interpreters have the renewable license. But I want to confirm that number on Monday. And somebody wanted me to clarify over here, it's 201 that I've got noted for renewable license, but I do need to make sure that's correct on Monday.
Now, I know in our agenda, we are supposed to have time for public comment. I am wondering if the group is willing to allow them to finish their presentation. And if you can, on those index cards that we provided, we will be be collecting those by the end of the night here. So if anybody really feels like they would like to make a statement, they could provide it as rather index card. Okay, is that, we have a question.
Will that be included in the minutes?
Yes, it will be included in the minutes. And also, I just had a sidebar with Dan. It doesn't seem like they'll be able to finish tonight, but they will be able to come to our next June meeting, okay? So I can let you wrap up here, Amber.
So we used a lot of different rationale in our research and of course looked at other states. And we have a comparison here on the screen of what's different and what's the same for WIDA versus BEI. WIDA is a diagnostic assessment for feedback. BEI is a standard certification tool. And it eliminates any subjectivity. The WIDA does not look at any English proficiency. The BEI does assess English proficiency. And just a question over here.
Just a sidebar.
So the BEI does include a English proficiency assessment. The WIDA is not recognized in other states versus BEI is recognized in other states, which makes interpreter mobility much more efficient. Interpreters who take the assessment in other states can work in other states that recognize the BEI. You could go to Illinois and take the test and work in Michigan if you wanted to. So it's easy to move around the country with a BEI credential. Currently, video remote interpreters providing services into the state of Wisconsin are required to have a Wisconsin license. It's difficult for interpreters who work in VRI for companies that are stationed in other states to provide those services here, and they're likely not going to have the WIDA assessment because it's a Wisconsin state assessment, versus BEI. It's much more easy for them to gain that credential and then therefore provide VRI services into our state. And BEI also has the ability to have specialized testing as well built into it. So once the proposal was in process, we did talk with DSPS. Our staff was in support of it, our legal department was in support of it, that the BEI would replace the WIDA. And DSPS confirmed that they would recognize the BEI Basic as a replacement for WIDA, therefore qualifying an individual to gain a restricted license. With the proposal, we did include the advanced and master level of the BEI. And the reason that that's included is because DSPS said that they will recognize the advanced level and master level of BEI as equivalent to the RID national certification.
This is Tom. clarify one thing, well, really two questions. I don't know if we can go back with how many states now currently recognize the BEI or actually use it as part of their state certification. And the second question would be that with the basic level, do you believe that it is equivalent to your current WIDA system? And that the advanced level is equivalent to what we consider the NIC certification?
Other states do that recognize and use BEI. There are 4 states that are actually have an official contract with Texas to be able to offer the test. Missouri, Illinois, and Michigan, and Texas. And once the moratorium took effect, those 4 states were inundated by interpreters wanting to take the BEI. And so yes, to answer your question, the BEI Basic would meet the necessary elements to replace the WIDA. The license says that an interpreter has to have a level 2 in both interpreting and transliterating to be able to get a restricted license, and the BEI Basic would be able to assess for those levels. So we wouldn't have to amend the license or any legislative language at this point to be able to use the BEI for that. For the advanced and master, DSPS said that it would recognize those 2 levels as equivalent to the NIC, the National Interpreter Certification, administered by the RE, by Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf. That would not require amendment to the law either.
Sorry. Question, just point of clarification. Did you mention that they would recognize BEI Advanced and Master with an amendment, or just?
Without.
Without it, okay, thank you.
Sorry, I jumped.
Our responsibility, written into the law, is that ODHH must offer the WIDA or have a replacement available for those interpreters who have not yet gained national certification. And so that's led us to this point of wanting to implement the BEI Basic as a replacement for the WIDA. Other states do provide the BEI at all levels because BEI is standardized. And for those interpreters who are nearing expiration of their license and need to gain the national level to be able to get the renewable license, could drive right now over to Illinois or Michigan and take their exam and be able to either keep their restricted license or be able to advance to the renewable license. So again, we are still at the proposal level. If the proposal is formally approved, we'll begin more in-depth research and contract negotiations at that point. So we are very hopeful, fingers crossed, that we'll have something in place by August 31st of 2017 to avoid those 28 interpreters from not being able to practice in the state of Wisconsin.
This is Terry. What is ODHH doing in the meantime? Are they still providing the WIDA assessment?
Terry, that's a perfect segue. So currently, and WIDA is still being administered, we're still offering the WIDA. There's no change, it hasn't been stopped or dropped or anything like that at this point. If the proposal is approved, then we will come together, DHS, and figure out a timeline. At some point, we will have to cease administering WIDA so that we can focus all of our attention to the research and implementation of BEI. And I want to emphasize what has been put forward right now currently is a draft. We still have the WIDA active, but we know that that's coming to an end. But DSPS and the law states that we have to continue to administer the WIDA until August 31st of 2017 because it's required. And if they expire before that, they will be grandfathered in. So for example, if we stop the WIDA of October 2016 and my license expires December, or if it expires at the end of August 2017,
Just asking for a point of clarification.
So in the event that we stop offering the WIDA, then anyone who holds a restricted license, the WIDA wouldn't expire because there's nothing to succeed. There's nothing for them to take. So that person would be granted a grace period, an extension, because there's nothing to offer them to be able to assess their skill, to either renew the restricted license or to move up to a renewable license. And we have a large number of interpreters who are very concerned because their WIDA will expire. And the law does require the practitioner to self-report if a credential that they hold expires. So that is information that will, of course, be shared with the community if this proposal is actually approved.
Pam?
Are you? All right, one more here.
I'll go super fast.
So BEI, that process will include the community. We will be having workshops, we'll be having listening sessions, we'll be having webinars, we'll be having presenters come in from Texas. So we will have a robust program to make sure this information is shared and the community is included. If you have more questions about the BEI, I know we don't have all of the answers at this point. We're at the very beginning stages. The proposal has not yet been approved. The very basic idea has just been sent up the chain. So we're at a very preliminary stage in the process. But we of course want to collect all of your comments, your questions, and you can submit those here at this email address that you see up on the screen.
Okay. Woo! Lots of information. All right, so we appreciate your questions and the clarifications. And if you have anything that you'd like to put down on the index cards, we shall select those. And then what we would do is we are going to also work with ODHH on answering them. those questions. And I have agreed with Dan that they will be coming to the next meeting, so the task force can further discuss this topic. And we also want to continue to answer your questions.
Amy is in agreement.
So, task force members, are you guys okay with moving forward and having ODHH come back for our June meeting and put them on the agenda to continue this discussion? I just want to get, and this is Tom, if there's more to discuss, yes. Okay, and this is
Yes.
Pam. Yes, thank you again, ODHH, Dan and Amber. Thank you to the staff members who have come as well.
Sorry, I just have one quick question about that, just procedurally, since I know we're wrapping up, it's the end of the night, but if there's anyone who has any super pressing things, is it possible to maybe take anything that we might have, you know, people travel all the way to get here and they might not be able to make the next meeting, if there's anything that has to be in person, can we just check if that's the case? Or maybe if we could ask the staff, they could stick out for some of us, that would be disrespectful.
Yeah, urgent. I want to stress that, you know, if you feel like you have to bring something to the floor at this point, I understand that, yes, you've invested the time to drive here and be here with us today, but even though we're not responding to public comments tonight, we could put it down on paper, like I said, on the index cards, you know, I'm open to suggestions if you still want people to come up and make comments.
And Representative Brostoff said, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So if nothing urgent,
Should we-
Jake Hartman, would you like to make a comment?
I do have a comment related to the slide up here, but generally with WISRID and WAD, and the task force, if I want to access information regarding SLIC and the task force, I can't find it on WISRID, I can't find it on WAD. Where do I access the information? Where is it a one-stop shop that I can get all this information, and that's kind of where I want to know where to access it. Every month we do send out information, WSD or WAD, WISRID, WESP, DHH. Their website does have all the information there, but not the meeting minutes, Jake is saying. WAD, it's not on WAD's website. And there's another comment saying, I can't find it on the... So I do send it to the organizations. I do make sure that I have all of the SLIT information there. And I do make sure, I have a little checklist that I make sure everything is there and it's in one place. Katie Goss. Thank you.
I also noticed that, you know, there are many deaf community representatives and that, you know, a lot of the information is in English. So I would recommend if we could do more accessible communication utilizing American Sign Language videos so that, you know, the community is able to access it. We just want to make sure, you know, is it, you know, can the community have more accessible information because this information about ODHH and whether ODHH should be taking over this test, you know, we want to make sure the community has that information. Like, for example, when they talk about training, who's going to provide that training? If we don't have accessible information, how are we going to know that? We want to make sure that we are getting this information as a whole. So is there a way we can do that?
So in April and then tonight, we've videoed all of the information and made it accessible.
Is there a point that we can make to summarize all of this information?
Summary, that's a big job. If it was a paid position, maybe I would sit and do that, but I don't know. It's a big responsibility. I'm trying to get out the information from Slick and getting vlogs set up and getting that all distributed as it needs to be. And of course, that would be our goal. And have someone summarize each meeting. Ashley, I'm looking at you. But we can talk with the task force members and talk about that at the next meeting. And we do understand your concern. But Dan does want to respond.
I would like to take time to thank the task force for giving us the time to come and present tonight. Our intention was not to just take over everything within the state and without any community involvement. We are a humble office and we value your input and feedback. We just have the authorization to provide and administer the exam. ODHH's role is to provide and administer the WIDA and then make sure it's a valid exam. We are accountable for that portion. That's our responsibility. It's really wonderful that we are able to share with all of you all of this information, but we are just in the beginning stages. We will not advance without your input every step of the way. We have protocols, however, that we have to follow, and that takes time. We have stakeholders that we are responsible to hear from. And ODHH's aim at this time is to use the BEI. And our goal is to provide quality services for our community, and that's what BEI can provide for us. We've gotten the A-OK from many people. We don't have a perfect system, we don't have a one-size-fits-all, but for the state, we do see ourselves relying on the BEI for quality assurance in the interpreting field in the future. Again, it's a standard of quality that we will be utilizing, or are potentially utilizing for Wisconsin to determine who is able to practice in the state. Hopefully, it'll work. WIDI is a quality assurance exam. We have to look then to see what our needs are for the state of Wisconsin and see what else is offered for its successor. That's our obligation here at ODHH. That's what we are charged with. We are not intending to take over any other roles besides that.
I know we are going to be wrapping up. One more question here from